Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rebel News live stream on this, a Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, let me tell you about my co-host, folks. Do you know, she despises rats. Is it any coincidence she lives in a rat-free province, the only one in our great dominion? She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
David, I'm doing wonderful. How was your long weekend? Did you get some time off? Did you take some time to enjoy it with your lovely wife?
You know what? No, the news never stops. I heard Justin Trudeau was in Markham, which is very close to where I live in Richmond Hill. So I hopped in the Menzies mobile, but I made a detour. We didn't know where he was in Markham. And basically Markham's about the size of, Rhode Island. But on the way, I made a pit stop to, here's a free plug, Mr. Safety Shoes. And I bought my steel-toed boots so the RCMP can't crush my size 13 wide hush puppies. So I had the boots, but couldn't find the Prime Minister before he vanished again, because they don't give advance notice of where they're going to be. And then, of course, yesterday, and maybe we can get to this, I went to the Labor Day Classic. It's actually a Labor Day massacre for the Toronto Argonauts, but we weren't there to watch the game, Maurizio and I. We were there to look at who got into the stadium and who didn't, Sheila, because Ontario is going to the mandatory vax passport on September 22nd, but guess what? The Hamilton Tiger Cats organization, from what I can tell in just an example of virtue signaling, said, no, we're going to have it kick in on September 6th, and if you're not double vaxxed or have proof of a COVID-19 negative test, you are not permitted into the building, even if you have a ticket. And Sheila, the vision that greeted me was just unbelievable. Even though it's all double vax people in there, or COVID-19 negative people in there, you still had to wear a mask, and there was still social distancing. But wait now, the social distancing was only in the nosebleed seats. In the lower bowl, where the rich season ticket holders sit, they're jammed in like sardines. And of course, the stadium capacity was reduced to 15,000. Kind of funny, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, on the weekend, they had 110,000 at the Big House. But I guess the Wuhan virus, Sheila, it doesn't like cheap CFL fans, but it loves college football fans. So that's the science behind the capacity differences, I assume.
Let's just put a marker in this conversation right here, because we are currently still on YouTube, and we want to keep it that way until we sign off of our own free will and then move on to the other platform. So before we get nuked here on YouTube, because we might be perceived to be questioning the science, YouTube, we're not. We're just commenting on what we saw with our own eyes, or at least what David saw with his own eyes. We should tell people what we're doing. And before we sign off on YouTube and move exclusively over to those other platforms for the rest of the live stream, we want to talk about what we're doing in federal court. But let's just get out of the way the nuts and bolts of the live stream. So this is the Rebel.
Oh, and Sheila, if I can just interject,
please.
Like contestants in Jeopardy, I put my preamble in the form of a question. So I'm not stating anything.
Right.
I'm just asking. We can do that, can't we?
It's completely interrogative. We don't know what's going on here. We're just asking the questions. So this is the Rebel News daily live stream. Used to just be hosted by Ezra on Friday. It used to just be on YouTube. Now it's neither one of those things. It is hosted by, I guess, whoever's on your screen every single day. Things are changing, and especially during the election campaign, because some of us get deployed on a moment's notice to do whatever story is breaking that day. You know, what you might get a whole different host and slate of rebels on your screen every single day. But it used to just be on Friday and hosted by the boss. The pandemic struck. Everybody's at home. home, but there's still more news than ever. This was a great way for us to talk to you about the news of the day and to make a little money through something called something called YouTube Super Chat. YouTube demonetized us, took those completely away. So instead of abandoning the 1.5 million YouTube subscribers that we have, we're still here for you, but we want to ask you nicely, if you like us and you want to support the work that we do and you believe in free speech and social media platforms leaving you alone, might I suggest you take an off-ramp to one of the other platforms. Justin, we got Rumble sorted out, right? Justin? Okay, perfect. So we're also over on Rumble this morning, and Rumble is a great free speech platform, and you can support the work that we do through something called a Rumble Rant, and you can leave us some money if you want to support us, because we'll never take any money from Justin Trudeau. We're also over on Odyssey. A couple different ways you can support us there. You can buy some of Odyssey's library cryptocurrency, and you can leave it as a tip or a hyper chat, or you can do it through regular old-fashioned money, but I think it's in US dollars, but you guys are smart, you'll figure that out. And also over on Super you can leave us a tip as a creator there. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can watch us and a bunch of different ways that you can support us without going through the censorship platform of YouTube. And before we sign off of YouTube, because there's still a bunch of you watching us over there, at least for the time being, before David gets us completely kicked off the platform. Oh my goodness, what am I doing over here? We, as you can see in the title of the live stream today, we are currently in federal court, or we will be at noon Alberta time, so 2 hours from now. And the reason we are in federal court in Alberta is because the Debates Commission denied us accreditation to attend the leaders' debate one more time. So in 2019, it was right down to the wire. It was a photo finish. We had lawyers working day and night on very short notice, taking on all of Justin Trudeau's lawyers, and we won. And David and our former colleague, Kian Bexey, were there at the debates asking tough questions that politicians did not want us to ask, and definitely the mainstream media did not want us to ask, because I recall correctly that they were pretty upset that you, David, and Kian had enough hustle to get to the front of the mic and ask questions when they just thought they could saunter up and take the microphone and ask a question nobody cares about.
You're absolutely right, Sheila. I was there with Kian in Ottawa, along with our friend Andrew Lawton of True North. And while the mainstream media were just outside having smoking breaks or eating chow, we were incredibly wary of where the escalator was. So as soon as we got the green light, we were the first. We were 1, 2, and 3, the three of us, and they didn't like that. And then I had some jabroni from Radio Canada come up to me. That's of course the taxpayer-funded French arm of the CBC, and he was trying to make the pitch that because there's two of you from one organization, Kian and myself, can one of you sit this out, because there's only so much limited time here and so many limited questions. I couldn't believe this. I was recording this audio on my cell phone, Sheila, and I mean the audacity. I mean, we were already shut out of a previous debate, and nobody went to bat for us, and we're only here by court order, and here we are again. I mean, Sheila, to quote the great Yogi Berra, it's deja vu all over again. In October 2019, we had to fight legalistically, exactly like we're doing now, to get in. And I can tell you, I'll never forget Ezra. For a very rare time, he looked down on the dumps. We were down at Queen and University in Toronto, where the federal court office was, and I said, well, what do you think, boss? And he said, I don't know, and then we won. Yeah. The same arguments by the same lawyers of the federal government, that is, to keep us out, are being made again. And I'm telling you, Sheila, I know I'm completely biased because we have skin in the game when it comes to getting rebel reporters into the debates. But given that the argument is identical and it was shot down less than 2 years ago, if I'm the judge, not only do I say, You guys are getting in. You have every right to be there. I mean, if foreign media from other countries are allowed in, how can you be banished? Secondly, we're awarding costs, of course. And third, Sheila, and this is the judge's prerogative, of course, punitive damages. Because you brought the exact same case less than 2 years later. Nothing has changed. Nothing. And you tried to argue it, hoping for another result. That's not how the courts of justice work. As far as I'm concerned, we set a precedent back in 2019. I'm not a lawyer. I might be wrong, but that's the way I look at it from a layperson's point of view. And we should be there. We should have our costs given back to us, and there should be a significant punitive damages so that it persuades these lawyers, on the federal government side, not to pull this in goodness knows whatever year the next federal election will be there. Anyways, that's my rant.
Well, there's so much to unpack there, because a lot of this is just sort of breaking this morning and over the weekend. Frankly, we were supposed to have beers and burgers with Chad Williamson, our lawyer, over the weekend, but he was enlisted to fight this battle for us and get it before the federal court in Calgary. So, he set aside his long weekend plans, and it looks like he's pretty darn prepared, but unfortunately, he's up against a lot more than our lawyers were last time around, because they have rewritten the rules since 2 years ago. They've had 2 years to plot and scheme to keep us out of this debate. They saw what the court said was the reasons that we should be allowed, and they crafted this new slate of rules to keep us Rebel News specifically out. Like, if you read through their new rules, it's like, oh, that one is Rebel. Okay, that's specifically tailored to Rebel. Yeah. The only people this could possibly keep out is the Rebel. Now, you can see all of that at letusreport.com. You can see all of our legal filings, and this is a really good reason to sign up for our Rebel News emails, because an email just came out from the boss with a Zoom link for that call, that federal court hearing today. So if you want to watch it, it's at noon Alberta time, so about an hour and 48 minutes from now. You can watch our lawyer, Chad Williamson, and his team, who worked very hard all weekend to try to get this in court. And they're fighting. These are our crowdfunded lawyers. Let me tell you, though, Chad's one of the best in the business. He's the lion for Chris Scott of the Whistle Stop and Natalie Klein. I mean, he's just out there giving her on a lot of our Fight the Fines cases and some of the bigger charter challenge cases out of Alberta. But he's up against 7 of Justin Trudeau's top lawyers. And the government has, they have the bottomless pit of your pockets to fight us with.
And Sheila, the nub of the matter in terms of why they want to disqualify us, they're calling us activist journalists. And yet, look at the mainstream media. They are bought and paid for by the government. If there is an inherent bias, it's them. They're getting money from the very political party that they should be reporting on. I mean, that is outrageous. Sheila, could you imagine if you were with the CBC or the Globe Mail and the Toronto Star, and you were doing a story, say it was on a construction accident, and the owner of the construction company came over and said, hey, I really like you guys. By the way, here's $1 million. Now go ahead with your reporting. I mean, it's outrageous. It wouldn't be accepted. And if it was accepted, you'd have to take every bit of that reporting with a shovelful of salt. So this idea that we're somehow biased when the federal government is paying the people to cover them, as our boss likes to say, how the watchdogs have become the lapdogs, give me a break.
Well, and we're just honest about it. How come the National Post, the Toronto Sun, the Toronto Star, even the CBC, they all have opinions sections? However, in the case of all those other places, their opinions also bleed into their news coverage. Yeah. We're at least honest about it, and we say, oh yeah, we're conservative. We come at this through a non-partisan conservative viewpoint. So please accept that that's the lens through which we report, and we expect our viewers are smart enough to understand what parts are opinion and what parts are fact. CBC doesn't tell you those things. They report opinion as straight news, and they get Justin Trudeau's money for it. Why is it that when we are honest about our activism, that excludes us from asking questions that our 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube want answers to? Just to put this into context, we've got broadcasters from Germany and Vietnam. They are going to be able to be there. If they have the same hustle that David Menzies does and get to the microphone, they'll be able to ask Erin O'Toole or Justin Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh a question. But we are being excluded because we do activism. And in some of their filings, they decided that the activism that excluded us was fighting for charter issues like freedom of speech and like freedom of the press.
And Sheila, it's amazing. You go to these journalists in the mainstream media and you question them if they will give you a response. I mean, the Globe and Mail reporter in Barrie last month, she literally ran away from... Actually, first she put her hand up like this, like she was holding a cross to Dracula. You know, and then she ran away without comment. But they'll tell you, well, if we... And especially the CBC, which has... was ever thus getting more than $1 billion with a B in subsidies. Well, if we don't get the money, we'll have to cut back, or we might go out of business. Yeah. You know, and what's amazing, if you go to the Toronto Star business section or the Financial Post section of the National Post, you'll see op-ed pieces about, you know, getting the likes of a Bombardier off the government teat to sink or swim in a privatized capitalist system. And meanwhile, those rules don't apply to them. Why?
I mean, it's the most, I mean, they've had 2 years to plot against us, to go through our entire business model and draft rules that would rule us out based on our business model. They've gone through each one of our journalists who applied for this, and we were sending the entire team. They went through, like a bunch of creeps, our stories and found, well, this is where they did a campaign to fight for freedom of speech. This is where they did a campaign to rebuild a church. This is where they did a campaign to help a small business owner fight their lockdown ticket. And because we did all that work to build our communities and advance civil liberties, they've decided to exclude us and damage our civil liberties. And where, please, somebody tell me where are all the journalistic associations? Where's the Canadian Association of Journalists? Where's PEN Canada, that organization that takes upwards of $70 a year from me and sends me an email once a month? Where are they to fight for my journalistic liberties? Nope. They're nowhere to be found. It's just us and our viewers. And if you want to help us crowdfund our legal fees for this, because, I mean, Chad is throwing everything at them and the kitchen sink. You can go to letusreport.com and you can actually see all of his filings there, all of his work so far, and you can see the government's filings against us at that same website, letusreport.com. And I think we'll have the Zoom link embedded there. Yeah, see, you have to register there. Thank you, Justin. So the Zoom link for the federal court is there. Let me stop you right here. Do not take any screenshots. Do not rebroadcast whatever's happening in that Zoom court call. You'll end up in contempt of court. Just watch it, take notes, watch how the government is literally fighting to keep journalists from asking them questions. But please don't take any screenshots. Please, please, please. You'll end up in contempt of court, and you don't want that.
100%. And Sheila, by the way, just to go back to what you just said, giving those 3 examples of them cherry picking our journalism over the past almost 2 years, freedom of speech campaigns. Well, we know where the Liberals stand on that. If they're re-elected, they're going to introduce a couple of bills that severely clamp down on freedom of speech. You mentioned rebuild a church. Justin Trudeau has been as silent as a monk when it comes to the vandalism and the arson affecting, I think it's now more than 60 churches across Canada, the most overlooked, underreported story of this calendar year. And then you talked about the anti-lockdown protesters. Well, who's locked locking the economy down. It's the government. And this is a government whose bureaucracy has not had one person laid off, whose bureaucrats, there has not been even a symbolic 5 or 10% pay cut, to maintain.
They're getting raises
narrative.
and new chairs, actually.
Yeah.
They got raises. And at the beginning of the pandemic, they got new chairs and office supplies so that they could more comfortably work from home if that's what they wished.
Well, when you have a ricotta cheese candy ash, you want to make sure you're on a plush cushion. But so to take away 5 to 10% salary, to just pretend, or have the optics suggest we're all in this together, we're all enduring pain. No, as you just said, Sheila, they got raises and new office furniture. So the 3 examples you gave, these are all things the government embraces. So it's little wonder those were some of the stories that they cherry picked.
Well, and like going back to the fact that Radio Canada journalist wanted you not to ask a question, to give up your spot. When you go to these functions, you can throw a paper ball in any direction, a crumpled up piece of paper. You're going to hit 3, 4, 5, 6 CBC journalists. Then you get into the French language ones. Then there's the Just Radio ones. They're all over the place. And they'll line up. They'll ask the same question in English and then French. And then the audio journalists will come ask it in English. And then another one will ask it in French. But you guys went to the federal court when a last-minute injunction, spent thousands upon thousands of dollars just for your right to ask that question. And they want you to give up your spot because they were too lazy to get up and walk to the mic faster than you.
Sheila, it's unbelievable. And
the entitlement.
The entitlement and how bloated they are. You mentioned the journalists, but don't forget about their entourage. I'll give you an example. There's someone I know in the Toronto market who does 3 hours of radio Monday to Friday. He has 1.5 producers. He has a full-time producer. He has a producer that's basically half-time, does other work for the company for the other half of the time. The competing CBC radio show, Sheila, 14 producers. 14 versus 1.5 in the private sector. So when you talk about how the CBC needs more than $1 billion+ a year, what about, downsizing, downscaling? What about doing the work of 1.5 people as opposed to 14 people? Are you telling me you need 14 producers to produce 3 hours of radio? Give me a break. I guess that's my theme. Give me a break.
Have you ever listened to a CBC podcast, by the way?
No.
Go on your whatever podcast platform, listen to a CBC podcast, like one of their investigative ones. Like they had actually a pretty decent one about Peter Nygard. But the last 3 minutes is all the technical staff associated with clicking record on a microphone and sound engineering. And I'm like, really? That many people? It is literally, the credits are enormous. And I'm like, you guys don't know how to use the free Audacity software? Okay, I guess. I'll come teach you if you fire 9 of those 11 people you have working there. It's a lot. But anyway, getting back to what we were doing here.
Sheila, one last thing about the CBC, if I may. I remember many years ago, about 10 years ago, the BBC, also taxpayer funded in Britain, they did something, I don't quote me on the numbers, but it was a single-digit percentage. It might have been 5, might have been 7%. Of the budget being cut. And guess what happened? All of the cuts were in management, which means that when you tuned in your favorite CBC shows, it was business as usual. They just gutted the BBC bureaucrats out of the mix and the content didn't suffer. So don't tell me that we can't cut with that organization down on Front Street. And by the way, if you ever go there, folks, it is a Taj Mahal temple. You will not believe the opulence of CBC headquarters in Toronto, just next to the other boondoggle, the Sky Dome. I guess maybe they're going to breed one day and create more government boondoggles.
Speaking of bloated government boondoggles, I missed a turn. I missed a turn and ended up stuck in traffic because I was rubbernecking on the Alberta Union of Public Employees, their new union head office. It looks like some sort of tank. It is. And I ended up, I'm like, where the heck am I? I missed my turn. I was like 20 minutes late for whatever I was doing because I could not believe the enormity of the building and the like opulence of the building. But at the same time, it was that modern art style, really ugly, which is just perfect for something that's so closely tied to government. I just want to say one more thing before we finish up. The Conservative Party of Canada. This should be an issue that they care about, right? Free speech, civil liberties, the government not deciding who is and who isn't media, and freedom of the press, except they are completely of one mind with Justin Trudeau's Liberals on this issue. Look how they've treated our journalists on the campaign trail. Corey Hahn, I'm looking at you. You've checked me in, Corey. I know you're watching. You've checked me into media events before. We have always been on our best behavior when you've checked us in. You don't know who Alexa is. So why are you keeping her out of events saying that she's going to be of bad behavior? Because when she goes in as just a regular curious person to Conservative events and not as a journalist and then asks Erin O'Toole questions, she asks good questions and she does a good job. But if she tries to come in the front door as a journalist, the Conservative Party of Canada is exactly the same as the Liberal Party of Canada on this issue. And it is a shame because they would be able to right now distinguish themselves as the party that actually cares about freedom. But they are no different than Justin Trudeau on this issue. And it is a shame. And it is a real disservice to Canadians. Erin O'Toole is not going to defend free speech in this country based on his behavior during this campaign.
It's so sad, Sheila, and Erin O'Toole and the Conservatives, I think, have had a good 2+ weeks out on the campaign trail, although he said some things recently which makes you think he's trying to lose by default. Trudeau's had 2 disastrous weeks, and I'm sure if I was a personal friend of his and said, if you had a crystal ball to see how things are going, would you have called this election? And I sincerely believe the answer would be no. But I do want to give credit where credit is due, and that is Kostas Minagakis, the candidate for the Conservative Party, gave me an interview, and it wasn't all fluff. I mean, I didn't want to scare him away. I asked him some tough questions, and he answered them. And I think it's a template for other Conservative candidates to look at and, observe that if you get an interview with a Rebel news reporter, we're going to be tough, but we're going to be fair. Which isn't the case, I think, with all the mainstream media types. And again, Sheila, we've talked about this ad nauseum before, and it's making me tear my hair out. This is exactly the same sort of media relations strategy, so-called, that Andrew Scheer maintained back in 2019. Bend the knee to the mean girls in the media party, as our boss likes to say. Shut us out and our 1.5 million YouTube, presumably conservative viewers, and hope things go well. And what happened to Mr. Scheer in a election campaign full of so many scandals, groping, blackface, SNC Lavalin, Jody Wilson-Raybould? The big shocker was Andrew Scheer maybe fudging the truth about his insurance brokerage credentials and being a dual citizen. Oh my goodness, prep the torture chamber. Give me a break. I said it again, give me a break.
Yeah. It's just an embarrassment right now that the Conservatives are behaving this way. And it is completely unnecessary. Don't even get me started on the backtracking on the gun ban, by the way.
What a misfire, no pun intended.
We're not even going to examine what the problem is with the gun ban. It's going to stay as it is. So you're fine with banning a 410 bird gun because it has a black stock. There's nothing that distinguishes Erin O'Toole's Conservatives from Justin Trudeau's Liberals, except on certain fiscal issues. Yep. And I'm not even sure and I'm expecting the flip-flop on that any second. I think Pierre Poilievre's going to get a little bit too popular and they're going to shuffle him somewhere else. Somewhere else boring, where people aren't going to like him as much. Because I feel like for Aaron O'Toole, the sun can only shine on one, and it's him. But yeah, with regard to free speech, what a win this would be for Aaron O'Toole if he were able to say, we will take questions from the nuisance litigants at CBC, and we will take questions from the Post-Millennial, and we will take questions from True North and the Toronto Star and Rebel News, because we want to be the government for all Canadians. Unfortunately, Aaron O'Toole can't say that because of his behavior on the campaign and the behavior of his campaign staff. I'm looking at you, Corey Hahn.
It's unbelievable, Sheila. And by the way, on the gun issue, what do you want to bet? That this is Aaron O'Toole not making this decision organically, i.e. it's not coming from what he really believes in, because this man used to be in the military. It is rather, Sheila, I'll bet you a donut on this, his woke 20-something inner circle that looks at a gun like the one displayed on your sweatshirt there as, oh, look how ominous that is. Look how lethal that is. And for an urban viewer who has never held a gun in his or her life, they're frightened by that. So when you see Justin Trudeau at that press conference, when he had a similar gun with the universal slash through it, he is addressing people that have no idea about firearms, and how that legal firearms owners are not the source of the kind of gangbang random killings we see. And then, Sheila, part two of Trudeau's platform that makes no sense. He's against mandatory minimum sentencing for those illegal gun owners that are injuring and killing people out on the street. How do you make sense of that?
You just don't. And I expect this kind of garbage from the Liberals. Bill Blair is the police chief who oversaw the explosion of violent crime and gang violence in Toronto. So many of those guns are trafficked across Canada's porous border. Now Bill Blair, in his role in the federal government, is tasked with securing our border. And if he did that, he would deal with the illegal gun problem in Toronto, but he won't. Instead, he's scapegoating people like me out here in Alberta. We're vetted every single day as licensed firearms owners. They run our names through the system to make sure we aren't doing anything to harm anybody, to make sure that we aren't engaged in all those things that the Liberals say would drive us to pick up a firearm and blow away our spouse, which is one of the things that they say, every day. If there's a restraining order brought against a legal firearms owner, it causes you to be reassessed in the system. I expect that kind of garbage and misleading stuff from Justin Trudeau and Bill Blair, and frankly, the Edmonton police chief at this point, because last week he tweeted a picture of what he claimed was an AR-14, but it was a 22. I expect this kind of stuff from those guys because they're either idiots or willfully misleading. So they get to be ignorant or liars. I mean, it's really their choice. But what about Aaron O'Toole? Why is he scapegoating me on this issue? And where are all his Western conservatives, by the way, who are the ones who for 6 years have said longer than that, actually, since the Conservatives campaigned and won on ending the gun registry? Where are all those long-term Conservative MPs, Alberta MPs? I'm looking at you. Where are you who stood up in the House of Parliament and voted down the gun registry? Did your little finger bangs when the gun registry was voted down? Where are you after 6 or 10 years of this mantra that we are going to stand up for law-abiding firearms owners in Canada? Where are you? Where are you? You're going along to get along with the party because you don't care about me. You want my vote, but you don't actually care about standing up for any of us. You don't stand for anything.
And Sheila, what is especially maddening, as I go back to what I said earlier, they've had a good 2 weeks on the campaign trail. Trudeau's 2 weeks have been disastrous. At the very best, it's been the weirdest campaign, I think, for the Liberals. They can't believe what's happening out there. These kind of pronouncements on the firearms issue, for example, it sounds like desperation that you're sinking in the polls and you want to reach out to another base. But there was no need for that. That hasn't been the case. And you know, Bill Blair is a special kind of disgrace to me, Sheila. He was the police chief of the biggest city in our nation for so many years. He knows damn well what the problem is. He knows who's killing whom, how the guns are getting acquired. He knows the legal gun community is not the problem. And a journalist put him on the spot a few days ago saying that under the Harper administration, I believe illegal gun crime in Toronto went down 8%. I hope I got my figures right. Yep. Under Trudeau, it's gone up 20%. And Bill Blair said something, well, the numbers don't tell the whole story. What? What tells the whole story then, Bill Blair? Emotions? Feelings? I mean, give me a break. Fourth time. Jeez. I'm sorry for the repetition, folks. It's just so maddening.
We're 35 minutes into the show and we haven't really said goodbye to our YouTube viewers yet. No. Justin, are we going to, or are we just going to keep? I'm just going to keep going here.
We can read the chats and then say goodbye.
So we'll read some chats and say goodbye, and that'll probably take us to the end of the show, and then we'll just say goodbye from there. Who even knows? Okay, we have a Rumble rant. You know, I'm going to put them up there. Put on the old specs. We've got a Rumble rant from John Entwistle. Thank you very much. Gives us $20. Has Canada become more divided or less divided in the last 6 years? I'm seeing a visceral dislike of politicians in a way that I have only seen in the past from paid protesters. But now we've got regular, normal people out there. What's happening now is what I think happened when the NDP got elected and people were like, what on earth is happening? This is crazy. And I saw Albertans protesting, like conservatives protesting for the first time in my life outside of maybe the wheat board protests. I think we're seeing that now, that, you know, people they're just tired of being called names. They're sick of the media lies. They're sick of being scapegoated for crimes that other people are committing, and they've just had enough. And it's shocking to the Liberals to see it, because they're normally used to being liked, that they can't realize that these people are like an organic thing that are popping up everywhere. They think that people who don't like Justin Trudeau have to be paid not to like him, because they get paid for all their opinions, I guess.
No, 100%, Sheila. And don't forget the other X factor in the division of Canadians, which is huge, and it's COVID. You know, with the masking Karens, the vaxxing Karens, you know, this new two-tier. Yes, Justin is now definitely saying we should say goodbye to you too. Me and my big mouth. But the point is, and I don't think I broke any rules, but I was saying, those who are masked and unmasked, those who are vaxxed and unvaxxed, those who are following the lockdowns, those who are opening illegal, that has caused tremendous division. And you know what, Sheila? It's ugly, it's heartbreaking, and it should never have happened.
Do you know what? Maybe we'll touch on this before we say goodbye to our YouTube viewers. The rock throwing that happened to Justin Trudeau over the weekend. Where was it? Was that in Newmarket?
I think, yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like in Newmarket, someone picked up some gravel, and some outlets are calling it rocks. I don't think he was stoned. Well, he could have been stoned, but I don't think he was stoned in like the biblical sense, but he might have been a little bit out of it. But Justin Trudeau, someone did throw some gravel at him, and I wouldn't even say it was gravel. I would say it was more like pea gravel, road gravel. And you saw the hand come up there to block it. I mean, but it's so small that you can hardly see it. Now, the reason I'm making it clear about the size of the gravel and the assault is based on the Liberal and media reaction. It doesn't actually, the reaction doesn't quite fit the crime. Here's my position on this, and David, I'll ask you for yours.
Yes.
Don't throw rocks at anybody.
Exactly.
Politicians, anybody. It is, at the end of the day, political violence. It's minor political violence. I've had worse happen to me. David, you definitely have had worse happen to you in the course of your job. But Don't throw gravel at politicians. Don't throw gravel at Justin Trudeau. You're going to end up in jail. You're going to end up flattened like a pancake by some of those husky fit slacks wearing cops out there. But the reaction from the media is a little bit insane. And the reaction from the Conservatives also is slightly out of line with what we saw there. Yeah, don't throw rocks at people. But this is not, an insurgency. It's not like the January 6th riot on the Capitol. It's not like someone's going to have to go to PTSD counseling like AOC now does because she was, I guess, nowhere near the Capitol on January 6th, if I have my facts straight. I mean, it's not that. It's somebody picked up some dirt and threw it at the Prime Minister. It's the kind of stuff that Jean Chrétien would choke people out for in the past. It's not a national crisis, but it's just bad behavior and it's rude and don't do it. And, sometimes when I see people who are getting out of control at these things, I think that's a Fed, that's a cop, that's a plant. There's a lot of that going on. And, that's why, we just shouldn't defend it. We shouldn't defend it. It's a dumb thing to do, but it's not the worst thing that happened to our democracy since, the FLQ crisis.
No, that's very important to point out, Sheila, because when I was filling in for Ezra on his show several days ago, I was addressing, and this was before the rock throwing incident or the gravel throwing incident in Newmarket, however you want to characterize it, that the media narrative, like, this is unprecedented on the campaign trail to see this. And here's the problem. You've got journalists that are either lying about history or journalists that are too young, they're just out of J school, that don't realize that Canada goes back to 1867, not 1997 when they were born. And I can tell you, Sheila, in the 1970s, there was that infamous train trip across Canada of Pierre Trudeau with the 3 Trudeau boys, including Justin, who was 10 years old at the time. Now, if you can imagine, this was when the National Energy Program was implemented, which devastated the energy sector. Gee, a little deja vu there, too, when it comes to energy devastation in Trudeau. And they went, and it began in Salmon Arm, BC. So there's a recession going on. Inflation's out of control. The energy sector is devastated. And at Salmon Arm, the Trudeaus were heckled because the optics were horrible. Here are a whole bunch of unemployed Canadians, and the Trudeaus are traveling in luxury in the Governor General's luxurious train car. And that's when Trudeau did the famous middle finger salute, which became known as the Trudeau salute. And the train went across. There you go. Thank you, Justin, for that. Look at that entitlement. I can tell you, as the train moved eastward in Calgary, there were people that egged it. Those who couldn't get in egging distance mooned the train car. By the time they got to Sudbury, which had huge unemployment at the time, there were actual rocks thrown, and I don't endorse that. I think it's despicable. If you want to throw something, folks, throw words, throw ideas, throw philosophy. Don't throw a physical thing that could hurt people. Those rocks actually smash some of the train's windows. The point I'm getting to, Sheila, is that this is so unprecedented. This is, we've never seen anything like this. Do you know, by the end of Trudeau's train travel, Sheila, the rail workers had a nickname for that train. They called it the Caesar Salad Special because it had so much vegetable debris on it that it looked like a salad. So please, let's have a reality check here. This is not Canada's version of storming the Capitol building or anything like that. And
as you were talking,
epilogue, Sheila, I'm sorry. Last week, what did we see with Maxime Bernier? An egg smashed over his head. And I'm telling you, if that was Jagmeet Singh or Trudeau or O'Toole, I'm already forgetting his name. That's ominous. You would.
cares?
I'm telling you, I think you'd already have a royal commission struck on violence and politicians on the campaign trail. Where is the reporting? Where is the outrage about that? That is an actual, real physical assault. No, he didn't get hurt, but that is too close to comfort for me. If that guy had a knife instead of an egg, it would be potentially a horrific story we're reporting on right now, Sheila.
Well, and like as you were talking there, please don't email me, viewers at home. I was definitely paying attention to David, but I was thinking about some things off the top of my head about just how many times Canadian politicians have been hit in the face with pies out on the campaign trail. I think it was the year 2000 when Jean Chrétien was hit with a pie in the Maritimes. Then that guy who did that, by the way, got jail time initially. In 2003, Ralph Klein was pied at a Stampede breakfast in Calgary. The guy who hit him got, I think, 40 hours of community service, 30 days in jail initially, probably only served 10 of those. Gail Shea, by the way, Conservative MP, I think Fisheries and Oceans at the time, maybe, in 2010 got hit in the face with a pie. So let's not pretend that this stuff doesn't happen from time to time on the campaign trail, but pea gravel isn't even getting pied in the face, let alone getting assaulted or hit with an egg.
And you know what? I once got a pie in the face, but it was from a politician, Sheila, Marilyn Shirley in Ontario. But and there is video evidence of it. I'll try to dig it up. But truth be told, I allowed her to do it because she just was so champing at the bit to do something physically to me that was nasty. So I let it happen.
You had it coming, probably, I'm sure. So anyway, gosh. I think that's where we stand on the throwing gravel at politicians.
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it, but it's not like storming the Capitol. It's just a dumb thing to do. And it's a bad idea because you're going to get in big trouble.
And Sheila, here's another reason not to do it. Even if you despise Justin Trudeau, hey, I get it. But for your own selfish reasons, don't throw stuff because it's going to backfire on you. And the way this is being reported, right? I heard a radio report on the way into headquarters today, Sheila. Many of the people wearing purple, which is associated with the People's Party of Canada. So you see what they're doing? They are smearing the People's Party of Canada. And I don't know how many of those people are supporters of the People's Party of Canada, but evidently if you wear purple, you're branded that way. And nevertheless, it is ricocheting. It's backfiring on the throwers as being violent thugs, and you don't want that as your image.
Sure. Oh, by the way, I found 2 more instances of pie throwing, again, from Alberta. We sure love to chuck our pies. A woman... she went to pie Premier Ed Stelmach, again at the Calgary Stampede breakfast in 2007. She hit his security detail instead. She still got 30 days in jail. And then a woman who, again, 2007 was a bad year for pie throwers. A woman threw a pie at Calgary Mayor Dave Bronconnier. And it sounds like she also got 30 days in jail also. So, I mean, again, it's gravel, not even a pie. So let's all just chill out a little bit.
And you know what? I get it. It's funny, a pie in the face. But folks, if you like that, get some Three Stooges shorts, okay? Mo Howard was the greatest pie thrower in the history of our species. And one of the best Three Stooges episode where his skill came into play was the one entitled The Sweet Pie and Pie. There, you'll get your pie fix there.
Yeah. Don't throw pies at politicians. You'll go to jail for, I guess, 30 days. Yeah. Don't throw gravel because those husky fit wearing RCMP officers running the security detail for Justin Trudeau, they'll put you into pancake mode. So just don't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going.
Get a hold of my steel-toed boot, Sheila. And by the way, by that I mean I'm playing defense, folks. I'm not going to be stomping on them, but when they stomp on me, they're in for a surprise.
We have 12 minutes left in the show, and I think we might be getting into like the danger zone with some of these next comments. So maybe we should say goodbye to some of our people on YouTube.
I always trust Sheila's judgment on everything. So Mr. Producer, can we terminate the YouTube feed? Just a few seconds to catch up, Sheila, because your spidey senses are tingling.
This next one for sure.
And there is a Spider Woman. You know, everyone knows Spider Man, but there is a Spider.